Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the United States of a Movie podcast. Granted, we are 1 week behind. Thank you very much for being very patient with us. I hope you enjoyed the re-release of our first ever episode, California. Guys, going back all the way to California. That was a great episode, by the way.
Yeah, that was fun re-listening to that one.
We managed to all pick LA-based heist crime movies, and boy, oh boy, were we right. What a great way to start. But no, we are here. We are back. My name is Ollie Pettigrew. I love movies. I've always loved movies. I've hosted movie shows, and I figured out how to have even more fun with movies by finding two massive movie fans to join me on this podcast. Let's welcome them back to the show. Will Hirsch, buddy, welcome back. How you doing?
Great to be here. And we watched these movies so long ago. I can't wait to find out what we watched.
Yeah.
It's going to be a rediscovery for all of us.
I had to genuinely think so hard, and I couldn't do it. And then I finally texted you guys today, said, guys, which movies did we do? I can't remember. But there were some good choices. Also, our other amazing co-host with a sardonic wit, Ryan Sander, welcome back, buddy.
Oh, it's so great to be back after a week of trying to remember these three incredible films. And I think I said on the text thread, I'm most looking forward to hearing Ollie attempt to pronounce all of the actors in one of these films. So I hope you've been practicing all week.
I got this. We're good.
We're coming back only to get canceled.
I did this.
Yep.
So the state. So this is the United States of Movie podcast. We are the podcast where we every week try to find one movie to define each state in the United States. We are a good 30-something, maybe even 40 states in.
This might be our 40th.
Yeah, I think so, because we've had a couple of special episodes. We've had we had a challenge episode with Carrie Byron. So we're moving along. We've almost finished all 50 states, which is great. But the state we are trying to take down this week is the state of Alabama. Now, as soon as anyone says Alabama, they immediately go Forrest Gump. So we didn't even go near Forrest Gump. We went
Forrest who?
We went in three very different directions. As much as, like I said in our first episode, we were all in lockstep, marching in the same direction. In this case, we ended up with a historical drama, a romantic comedy, and a movie that I would find very hard to even define. A Tim Burton movie. How about that?
I thought you were talking about my movie. Shit.
Oh no. Let's actually, Ryan. Yeah, why don't you start with the movie that you chose?
I picked. I went against our normal rule of not picking a movie that has the state name in the movie, and I picked the romantic comedy starring Reese Witherspoon and some other people, Sweet Home Alabama.
Yes, you did. You were circling another movie. And then you went.
Cannot remember what it was. Cannot remember.
Was it not My Cousin Vinny? Is that not what you were?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and then I think if I remember correctly, you guys talked me into Sweet Home Alabama.
I didn't talk. Buddy.
No, do not put this on us.
You talked yourself into.
To our audience at home, they did.
Never, not in a million years.
Sweet Home Alabama. It's directed by Andy Tennant, who this is kind of what he does. He does Fools Rush In. He's done Hitch, Fool's Gold, Anna and the King, that classic romantic.
Very like by the numbers romantic comedies, though. There was nothing funny about this movie.
I was watching it with Mrs. and at one point I was like, oh, I get it. They forgot the com part.
Yeah.
There's definitely the rom. There's not an incredible amount of com.
No.
But I also think that we've been spoiled. Like we have had other romantic comedies on the show before. I'm thinking like Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Sure.
That is a funny movie.
And The Proposal, the best. We all
obviously,
agree.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then Home for the Holidays to a lesser extent. Maybe. I don't know.
That might have had more laughs. Yeah.
Sweet Home Alabama, I hadn't seen since that movie came out. So that is like even pre-Mrs. I didn't even realize it's that old. It's like a 23-year-old.
I think we said it was the first film released after the attacks on 9/11.
It's the first film to shoot in New York after the terrorist attacks of 2001, and some would say this was worse.
Yeah. This is the movie that says terrorism wins, I think.
So it was America raising the white flag. Was this movie? Just be like, well,
we're back, baby.
The thing is, it sucks, but it also doesn't suck. I mean, Mrs. enjoyed it. I was watching, like, it's got, just because Reese Witherspoon is Reese Witherspoon. That young lady just has incredible amounts of charm and talent, and at this point, she's just firing on all cylinders. You've also got Josh Lucas as the ex-husband, Patrick Dempsey. I cannot wait to get into talking about Patrick Dempsey's character with Will and just the writing of it, because it's ridiculous. But you got Fred Ward, you got Gene Smart, Candice Bergen. There's a legit cast. It tells the story of a successful, it's just so by the numbers. It's almost ridiculous, but successful fashion designer who's hidden her Southern roots. She's about to marry, like, the mayor's son, or I can't even remember.
Future President Patrick Dempsey?
Yes. So yeah, it's like very much part of sort of society, and it turns out she hasn't actually finalized her divorce to old Blue Eyes Josh Lucas, who just so happens to also secretly become a fucking I don't care anymore.
Yeah, Chihuly artist.
Yeah. But it's like, it's got like interesting sort of it starts off with a kiss and then gets struck by lightning with a young Dakota Fanning.
I was excited because this movie almost opened with my favorite trope. I was like, oh my God, these kids are going to get blowed up.
Are we going to kill a child? Are we going to kill two at the same time? I mean, honestly, Ryan, you must have been rock hard.
If that scene would have ended, yes, currently. If you open with that scene, and then I know we always say this, but then dodgeball ending, guys, we'd be talking.
It would be a 10 out of 10 movie. Just be like, wow,
this
movie was 1 minute long and it was perfect.
The Massacre of Alabama. Yeah,
Will, you should edit that and throw it on your TikTok. That'd be great. Just create a new TikTok for our dodgeball endings of anytime we bring it up.
That's a great idea.
Somebody write
that's
that
a
down.
fantastic
That is copyright of this
You heard it
podcast.
first. Yeah.
But that is a great. It's the
like people were doing the if it was in 2004 and it always ended with like that Linkin Park song.
Yeah.
That, but with the dodgeball ending.
Yeah, this is great. It's how it should have ended, like dodgeball, instead of how it should have ended. Will, this is it, buddy. This is it. Right. That's an idea. That's a YouTube channel.
Throw the Curb Your Enthusiasm music over it, and fucking you're done. What are we even doing this podcast for?
I feel like we're wasting our time.
We'll get right to the first scene in Selma where the police attack the protesters. Credit.
But yes, there were other movies chosen here. So the one that I chose, because I'd never seen it, I knew it as being quite successful. It was an Oscar nominee, if not a winning movie. 2014 Selma, directed by Ava DuVernay. She did Wrinkle in Time. She's pretty good. But this cast, I remember texting you guys because I was watching it first, going, I was just blown away by how every 5 minutes another incredible actor turns up.
Yeah, it's the star cast.
And it just kept going, and then just when you think it stopped, Cuba Gooding Jr. and Martin Sheen turn up, and you're just like, "This is ridiculous."
Yeah, uncredited, or I think Martin Sheen is uncredited, right?
Yeah, very mildly credited.
Cuba Gooding Jr. has been uncredited for the past 15 years.
Yes, it's like he's not even in this movie. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's David Oyelowo as MLK. But then it just kept going, and it was Oprah Winfrey and Tom Wilkinson, Wendell Pierce, Carmen, Lakeith Stanfield, like I said, Cuba Gooding Jr., Tessa Thompson, Jeremy Strong, Tim Roth, Martin Sheen. It was unreal. Also, not a comedy. So I will.
Not a lot of laughs.
Yeah. No. Even Mrs. was like, "Wow, you went with Selma," and I was like, "Well, you know what? As a British boarding school kid, while we understand that civil rights is something that happened in America, it's also not something that is incredibly detailed taught to British kids. So to be honest, my full-on understanding of how this thing went down and what happened, I didn't have it. So I'm not sure Alabama's going to be so thrilled that we're considering that.
Well, with the way things are going in our country currently, it might not be taught.
I was going to
Yes.
say
going in the
yeah,
future,
it's-
like,
yes.
you know.
still probably
Yeah.
not taught in Alabama.
I don't know what you're talking about. There's no such thing as the 1960s. Let's just move on. Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a yes. If this was a book, it would have been burned in Florida already.
They just in the classrooms they just make them watch Sweet Home Alabama. This
Yeah.
is our historical record. This happened.
this is how our state came to be.
Plantations are where weddings happen and nothing else happens.
But this movie, I mean, it's a movie that is almost a documentary.
Yeah.
To be quite honest, and when you do look it up, it is credited as being like, for some people, like one of the most historically accurate movies ever made. And
That's really good.
yeah, I mean, I again, because I don't fully understand, or didn't understand the history. So I'm watching it and I'm wondering, okay, is this going to be, an inspired by, or is it going to be like a biopic or something like that? But it's a very sort of specific period of time in the civil rights movement and in MLK. But I started realizing, because all of these top draw actors are turning up in what would be very small roles in a way, it's clicked for me about 20 minutes in with Lakeith Stanfield, I think, where I'm like, oh, they're playing real people. They're all real people.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that everybody in this movie is being portrayed as they were in situations, to the very situations and places that they were, and in some cases saying the exact words that were said. And so that was, for me, I think it's an important movie to watch. If you haven't watched it, like I said, I'm glad I watched it. I feel like I learned something from this movie, but also just David Oyelowo as MLK.
Unbelievably good. So good. I mean, everyone in this movie.
There were a lot of times where he was speaking where I was like, wow, he's like, even if like facial resemblance isn't 100% perfect, like just his mannerisms and his speaking voice, I'm just like, whoa, he's like really nailing it. He sounds exactly like MLK.
And if I remember right, this movie was only nominated for best song?
Oh, it did.
Right?
Like, I remember for
Are
Common.
you talking about that?
Because Common is he's he was one of the producers. He did the music. I remember it getting nominated. Didn't it get the
I think he got a Best
Golden
Actor
Globe?
nod.
Yeah. It got the Academy Award. Yeah, but I think he got nominated for Best Actor, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else it was up against that year, because I never knew. But I was watching this. I'm like, God, how did this not win all the awards?
Yeah, it 2014. Was it Mad Max? Was that what it was up against?
Oh, wow. I love it. Yeah, it's just like, guys, no,
another historically accurate film.
Yeah. Current day Australia.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, what I liked about it is it wasn't being flashy while at the same time being an extremely well-made movie. If that makes any sense to you, like, they're not, like, the cinematography, they're not trying to be overtly making it look like a movie. I think they were trying to make it just feel real. But again, I was just watching, like, some clips again just now, and I was watching the trailer, and I'm like, no, it's a good-looking movie, but it's just not being flashy.
No.
It's
not like in the way like an American Gangster would be like that. It's got a similar look and feel. It does feel like a biopic or biopic. I don't know how you say it.
I always go backwards. Which is it? Is it biopic or biopic?
You still say tomatometer, so your credibility is out the window.
Say biopic, but that's just that's me.
Biopic.
Don't biopic. Yeah, no, this movie was stunning. It's a movie I like. I don't normally watch. I would consider like biopics or documentaries like this, but this was such a joy to watch. And I think such an important film. And you're right, it looked incredible. It was, everyone in it was incredible. This was especially after watching this after Sweet Home Alabama. I was like, oh my God, finally a real fucking movie.
Right.
God.
Yeah.
And it did my favorite thing at the end where it's like shows their picture and it says like so-and-so went on to do this.
Well, that's the thing. That's what I mean, is once you got to the end and like, they were showing photos of these moments you'd seen in the movie, and it's like, wow, it's exactly
they were cutting in the real footage.
Yeah, they'd like recreated it, and it was sort of shocking. And then like also, being someone that was in America at the time, understanding that, I remember the reaction to when John Lewis died. He was a member of the Congress, I believe. But then you watch this movie and you go, oh, oh, I get it. This guy's a legend. You know,
Yeah.
that was really, really fascinating for me. And so I just think like it was a great movie. I enjoyed it, but like I said, I'm going to probably be saying it a lot when it comes to getting into the movie. Is just wow. I think people should watch it. Like I feel like I almost have to make my kids watch it. Guys, you should watch this movie. It was in the 2015 Oscars. It was quite a stacked year actually. That's the year of Birdman, American Sniper, Boyhood, Grand Budapest Hotel, Imitation Game, Theory of Everything, and Whiplash. So yeah, and I think that was the year that like. Birdman took Best Picture. Actor was Eddie Redmayne for Stephen Hawking. J.K. Simmons as Whiplash for Best Supporting. So it was, it was a great year for movies. But also, I think it's kind of along the same lines as as we've talked about. It's Oscars so white. It's like getting a movie like the last time I think they'd had any color was when we did Hustle and Flow, and they had the guys the best song performance.
Also for best song, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Or to a lesser extent, RRR, which was nominated for best song, right?
Banger. Oh my God, I have to watch RRR again. Yeah, actually, Will, you also have to help me out. You have to source me a Hindi version of that on Blu-ray because I want a Hindi version.
The place where I got can you turn the dog up a little bit? Thank you. The place where I got my very legally purchased Star Wars movies from sold me RRR in Hindi, so we can make this happen.
Sign me.
That's very legal store, I'm sure.
Yeah, just have to buy a Blu-ray player. But there was one more movie. There was one more movie that came to the table that I think I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It was a really interesting, strange, special kind of movie that made me feel kind of sad at the end. Will, tell us about your choice. It was an interesting one.
I went with everybody's favorite Tim Burton film, or at least my favorite Tim Burton
Big
film,
Eyes.
for real. Big Eyes. Man, those eyes were huge. I've never seen that movie. I don't actually know if that's part of the film or not. But Big Fish was the movie I picked.
Yeah, it's
legitimately my favorite Tim Burton movie.
I can see why. Is Big Eyes not a sequel to this one? Just kidding.
It could be. I will never find out because I won't watch it.
You're thinking of Eyes Wide Shut.
The whole Eyes series, yeah, of course.
The Eyes-verse.
Yeah, Big Fish, 2003, directed by Tim Burton, based off a book, starring Ewan McGregor and Albert Finney, Billy Crudup, Jessica Lange, Steve Buscemi, Danny DeVito, Deep Roy, who turns up in lots of Tim Burton's movies, including the thing about it is like Tim Burton, after a certain point, we've talked about it before, I feel like just stopped being good. But then there's Big Fish.
Yeah.
I think maybe Big Fish was like the last.
I think it was the turning point because if you look at the trailer, you're gonna have to like, oof, some turds in there.
Yeah, I can't think of anything he did after that I think is good.
Because no one saw Dumbo, right?
Right, and it's like, and this one, it still has Helena Bonham Carter in it. But I think this is the first like Tim Burton movie I've seen where there weren't any. No one's wearing eyeliner.
The only I caught Helena Bonham Carter, her character, but you get like some of the, like when he's in that leg muscle stretching contraption, I was like, that felt very Tim Burton designed. Like it had that was like feel. Like I was watching this. I should back up. When you picked this, I like bemoaned. I was like, oh man, because I hadn't seen this movie forever and I didn't remember it fondly. But I'm so glad you did, because watching it again with fresh eyes, with big eyes, I had like a new enjoyment of this movie, and I because I was curious. I was like, what makes this your favorite Tim Burton movie? And I think you'd said it's because it's like the least Tim Burton-y, and that it's
he
makes
got
it
out
so
of
enjoyable.
His own way. He has a tendency to get in his own way and like really like put overemphasis on the visuals to the point like Ollie, the Alice in Wonderland movie he did. Yeah, it's just garbage because he can't stop himself. He's got
Wonka too, right? Do you do Wonka?
Wonka's like really, really bad.
It's wonky.
Yeah. So it's the one where he like focused on telling a story. I honestly think it's more of a John August movie, the screenwriter.
Yeah.
It feels more like a John August film than it does Tim Burton. But I think that's to its credit.
I think I was actually just looking. Ryan, you're totally right. Big Fish is like exactly in the middle of his
That's the turning
filmography.
point. Yeah.
And running up to it, you've got Beetlejuice, Batman, Edward Scissorhands, Batman Returns, Edward, Mars Attacks, Sleepy Hollow, Planet of the Apes, Big Fish, and then it becomes Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Corpse Bride, Sweeney Todd, Alice in Wonderland, Dark Shadows, Frankenweenie, blah, 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 blah. You know, though we have, and I don't know if you guys saw it, the day that we are recording this, 2 hours ago, the Beetlejuice trailer just landed.
Yeah.
You know,
Terrible title.
Yeah.
It should have been Two Beetle, Two Juice.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Somebody on Twitter actually, like, 2 days ago put out, like, I can't wait for the Beetlejuice trailer that has the Deo song in a slow, like, somber rock version. And then the trailer came out and I'm like,
terrible.
You're kidding.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't believe they actually did that. So
yeah.
Thing is,
whatever.
I definitely can.
Michael Keaton, man. I mean, I'm a part of
love Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Love his Beetlejuice.
I just think this whole Lego sequel thing, like we were just talking about the Ghostbusters, like it's got a very uphill battle to climb, you know, and it's either going to be all right, or it's just going to be absolute shit. But
yeah,
I'm just holding out hope. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
I mean, just how can they Beetlejuice again? Like Beetlejuice is such a crazy movie.
What is he, like buying a new beach house? Like, what is he? Well, and I was also shocked to find he directed like all the episodes for Wednesday, even though he didn't direct the original Addams Families. Like
that was weird. Yeah, that was.
Did you watch Wednesday? It was good. Like I enjoyed it.
Was fine.
Yeah. It's not. I'm not the audience for that movie. That's the thing.
Yeah, my daughter liked it for sure. And that kid, that kid that played Wednesday, isn't she in Beetlejuice as well?
Yeah, she's definitely the most uncreative casting choice ever.
Yeah.
Like, who could play the daughter? Like, okay.
Yeah,
I got yelled at because it mispronounced. It's not
Jenna Ortega.
It's Jenna Ortega. Yeah,
Ortega,
someone yelled at me on TikTok because I said Jenny Ortega.
Famously from X.
Yes.
West X.
I was just like, I can't be bothered to remember anybody's name under 20. Like, I just, it's just I don't care.
So it's a like you're saying, written by John August. It was going to be Spielberg was the one that was actually circling it, and of course it is. It's a story about a dad, son's relationship with his dad. Just like, hang on, let me just count every single Spielberg movie, every single one.
I can see that, yeah,
definitely.
But at the same time, I believe the reason like Tim Burton does this one, he had just lost his father and his mother like a couple of years before it as well. So, it seemed like quite a personal movie. It's a bit bonkers, isn't it? It's sort of it's an interesting movie. We talked about unreliable narrators before on the show, and this is not so much an unreliable narrator. It's a very colorful narrator. Who it's basically tells the story of Albert Finney, but we flash back to Ewan McGregor playing the young version, and it's sort of like it's basically as Albert Finney is dying, Billy Crudup is kind of trying to, I don't know, just sort of understand his relationship with his father, or just understand his father, because he's always felt like his dad's always spinning a yarn. He's like, what's the reality? Is nothing real? Why does he always have to be the center of attention kind of thing? And it's an interesting way that it starts. And then it just goes off. It's to watch a movie where you're just watching the sort of the yarn being spun. I can't think of any other movie kind of like it, where instead of showing us the reality, it shows us the imagined reality.
Yeah,
and
you're watching like a fairy tale almost.
Yeah.
Like it's the way it unfolds. It's I thought it was such an interesting way to do it too. And I think that's maybe what turned me off the first time I'd watched this movie. But watching it now, I can definitely have a new appreciation for it. And it was the way it's shot, the way it's done, and the way it's acted is all very fun. They all feel like little vignettes, little stories that are contained in this one big story.
I think that's exactly right. It feels like, it feels like a bunch of episodes. It's like watching, did you watch the whole season of Big Fish? It's like all these other things together, but it's like, it's wacky without ever going to Tim Burton. You know what I mean? Like, it never goes, even when it's like his car is underwater, even when it's like he's meeting giants, even when it's all of these sort of crazy and weird things happening to him.
Yeah, there are certain shots that beckon his previous works, like when you see that shot of the whole town, and it's very like Edward Scissorhands. It kind of looks like that town, or when he's in the woods, it kind of feels like Sleepy Hollow a bit. Like there's like a a bubble around it that is still very much Tim Burton's vision, but it's very restrained, I think.
And it was
It's
interesting.
very slightly surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, and it's also sort of very interestingly performed by Ewan McGregor.
A flawless 18-year-old, by the way.
Yeah. But like he's kind of just got this sort of, because it's not a real version of him. You know what I mean? It's so he's always kind of optimistic, and he's always kind of bright-eyed, and there's something about, Ewan McGregor's got that smile, and he's got those great eyes.
The charm, yeah.
Mrs. It's why I have a son called Ewan, right?
Let me ask you this. If you were telling your Big Fish story, who would be the actor playing you in that story?
Ooh, who would be
I don't have an answer. I just something I thought of.
Idris Elba.
Zac Efron. I don't know. Robert Pattinson.
There you go.
But as Batman. So he's just at
True,
all
yeah.
times.
See, I was going to go Danny DeVito, obviously.
No, Jason Mantzoukas. That's yours.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Oh, my God. That'd be the dream.
There you go.
That would be hilarious.
I think, obviously, for me, Schwarzenegger, Idris Elba.
Idris Elba. Yeah,
any of them would be perfect.
Just large black men.
I mean,
fair enough.
I just don't see casting in that way. I don't have that narrow.
I don't see color, Brian. You racist.
God, shit. Ugh, God.
Like,
we're going there, huh?
Yeah, before we get to Selma, let's get it out of the way now. But no. I don't think I'd seen this movie. I was saying to Ryan just before we started rolling, but I think I saw 3/4 of this movie in a hotel once when I was overseas on a shoot. So I remembered the ending, but I didn't remember that sort of first 10, 15 minutes. I think I like this movie. I mean, like by the end of the movie, I'm sad, am I the only one that's basically crying at the end?
I was talking shit the entire time, and then it cut to like, okay, now I'm crying. I think my problem was like when this had come out, it was like, because I definitely saw Planet of the Apes in the theater, and that was not a good movie. But like, it was a bad movie. Hey, you're wrong. It was bad. But I think it was like, oh man, I love Tim Burton. I want more of like the things that I love. Like I want more of the Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and the Batman's. Like I want that look and feel, that vibe, those stories. And then he comes out with this, and I'm like, oh, so this is where it's all going. Or like you're 0 for 2, and then everything after that was like, kind of. But now watching it again, it's great.
It's like, it feels like on the run up to Big Fish, you feel like Tim Burton was always wearing sunglasses at night, and then like make Big Fish, and he goes, "Wait, there are colors, other than black and off black and gray."
And then he just leaned into it too much, and he's like, "Oh no,
they went way too far."
Yeah.
What if I put Johnny Depp in everything?
Yeah, and Helena Bonham Carter.
Oh, I want to change my answer to Johnny Depp. That's who play me in my Big Fish story.
Playing an 18-year-old flawlessly.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah. I think I saw this in theaters. I'm not sure. Either I saw it in theaters or very soon after it came to DVD. And it instantly became one of my favorites. But it has a little bit more significance to me now because when my grandfather was passing away, it was a very similar type of situation. We'd be going to visit him in the facility where he's in the bed and stuff, and it was very much like that. And so there's a little bit more of like a personal connection with it now.
Definitely.
But I've actually read the book. And what's interesting is
not the novelization, the actual book.
Not the novelization.
Okay.
And in the book it says it can take place anywhere. I'm like, why does this keep happening to me?
It wasn't even a fish.
It's called Big Eye. It's all really weird. But what's funny is like I think the movie has much more of a through line and is much more linear than the book. The book is even more like self-contained, like vignettes that don't really connect. Mm-hmm. It's almost just like an anthology of tall tales that are all about Edward Bloom. And like half of it is totally different. Like there's a lot in the stories that are like totally different from the movie. One of the few cases where the book is not as good as the movie that resulted.
Interesting.
I was gonna say you can almost see this as like, and maybe I'm wrong, but you can almost see this as a series of books, almost like a Jack Reacher type, where each book is like a different.
He kills a new dad every movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
He just goes from small town to small town.
You've just been
dads.
erased. Sure. But no, I mean, you can almost see like the way we're talking about, like all these little vignettes, or they could all be mini episodes, but you know, I could see this as like a series of books that have an overarching narrative to them. You know?
Mhm.
Well, I mean, well, speaking of overarching narrative, this has got an overarching narration. You know, you've got, it's kind of like one of those movies where it's, you know, you've got Albert Finney sort of telling the story, you've got Ewan McGregor reacting and acting in the moments, and then it's sort of like, and it's very sort of, it cuts back sometimes to Billy Crudup asking the question. So it's like, it's not, it's almost like one of those episodes of a TV show where they're doing clips, you know, like, it's like a season 7, and be it all the guys from Friends or be it whatever, all sitting around, and suddenly we're doing a clip show and we're doing sort of the highlights.
Right.
In this case, it's like the guy's doing the highlights of his life, the big important moments of his life, but through this sort of like wonky pair of glasses that he wears.
I think what I write in the text thread, I was like, this is kind of the same movie as Forrest Gump if Forrest Gump wasn't a giant pussy.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Because he does all the same things. Like he goes to war, he marries the lady, and
right, he goes to the, you know, time moves differently. He goes to the circus. It's got a lot. I almost feel like there was a couple that, and so we had that.
Danny DeVito's a werewolf. Okay.
That's right. He's a werewolf.
Yeah.
What?
But
that
like
was nuts.
Matthew McGorry. He's basically the really, really tall guy.
Yeah.
Who plays the really, really tall guy.
Mm-hmm.
Though you do watch, the poor guy does look like he's in a lot of pain through that movie. I think, right,
anytime I see like a gigantic person, I think there's videos of like this young kid who's in high school, like is playing basketball, and you just look like he looks so frail. I'm like, this kid could just shatter into pieces. I felt that same way watching him, or some like the feeling you get when you watch like an older Andre the Giant. You're just like, man, this hurts to watch. Like,
But they did, they used like, so, you know, of course, in Albert Finney's version of it, he's actually massive, like gigantic, like bigger than a car kind of thing. Whereas, you know, in reality, he's just a very tall guy. But there was one shot in particular that it did make me giggle for being, okay.
I know what you're talking about.
It's the bit where Ewan McGregor hands
the backpack,
his backpack. And so then he does the reverse shot.
Definitely a small child.
It's definitely an 8-year-old child.
For sure.
handing over a tiny backpack to just a normal sized guy. But I liked it that they didn't, you know, they were using sort of some old school tricks here and there.
Yeah.
You know,
I was wondering if they did like a lot of forced perspective, like
some Lord of the Ringsian style.
Yeah, right. Before that, because this came out in 2004.
This is 2003, and I know that I think the first Lord of the Rings was 2001, wasn't it? It was kind of around then.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to think about as well.
Yeah, right.
I mean, also there's like things like that is like they're doing a Harry Potter TV show. I mean, it's been long enough since the movies came out that they're going to do a TV show. Though at the same time, honestly, as much as I love the Harry Potter movies and I did read the books, I can't stand J.K. Rowling anymore.
Stop giving her money.
Completely. That's what happens. She's like Elon Musk. It's when you've got so much money that you don't have to care what anyone thinks. You just become a total twat.
Or you'd be like me, a person who has no money and still does that. I don't see what the money has to do with it.
You're a twat. So that's you know.
Exactly.
That means a lot.
Yeah,
it's a fun watch, this movie. Like the bit with the twins, you know, I think that like the twins, the special
that was cool.
Twins was particularly like, whoa.
Yeah, I was wondering how they did that and how he fucked them.
That's the deleted scene. In the book, it gets really
oh God. That's why you got the book.
Yeah.
That's a graphic novel, yes?
Yeah. It's not a book.
Oh, it's graphic.
There was a novelization of Eraser.
Yes.
But like, so Will, you claim this to be your favorite Burton movie. Is it purely, but just because I understand what you mean by Burton getting out of his way, but what else about the movie? Do you connect with that, like you're talking about with the grandfather sort of element as well? Like, just
Yeah,
I'm interested as to why you picked this over, like, you've got Batman and you've got Edward Scissorhands and all these other
for
sort of.
sure. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, if you have a well-told father-son story, you're like 90% of the way there with me. Like that's an easy way to get me to like your film.
But if you add baseball to it, you're like, no, I'm out.
I'm like, no way.
Baseball ghosts, get the fuck out of here.
But throw some Major Pain in there and a couple of twisters in the background. Bish bash bosh, we're on board.
Oh man, now we're ruining the movie. But yeah, I just think story wise, I really like what John August did by really like focusing the story much more on the tall tale of Edward Bloom's life as opposed to Edward Bloom telling it like a bunch of unrelated tall tales. So I liked that improvement from the book. But yeah, it's just also, the desire to know as much as you can about a parent while they're going towards the end of their life or getting older, like really just gets me. That final scene, I just think is like one of the best scenes in any movie, especially any Burton movie. It's more heartfelt, it's more real than he like usually lets himself get.
Definitely.
His movies don't. I like a lot of his earlier films, but they don't. There's like an emotional core that he doesn't usually get to, or he doesn't feel comfortable playing in that area. Some movies don't feel personal in that way. And I really like that he went for it this time.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Like, there's this quote from him I'm reading right here. He's like, my father had recently died. I wasn't really that close to him. It was a heavy time, made me start thinking going back to the past. It was something very difficult for me to discuss, but then this script came along and it actually dealt with those same issues. And so it was an amazing catharsis to do this film because you're able to work through those feelings without having to talk to a therapist about it. And like, it's something like I've mentioned before that I feel like, all of Spielberg's movies are about divorce. I mean, when you finally watch The Fabelmans, it's like, one of the least flashy movies that he's made. But when you watch it, it's like, oh man, this guy's just having therapy with all of us right now. He's
therapizing, yeah.
It's like he's just getting over some shit right now. Yeah. But like, I can see that. I think that's what you're right, and I think he definitely doesn't run away from it. He seems to run towards it, and I think, but it never feels heavy. This movie. It also doesn't feel frivolous.
No,
but you know what I mean. It's like instead of it like dragging you down, like when the end scene is basically his father dies, but it's done in a way that's fun and funny. And I always like, and Billy Crudup, like he went from me 0 to 100 because for me, I didn't know who he was until I saw Almost Famous, where he plays that rock star. I'm a golden god. He's on top of the thing. I thought he was like such a cool dude, and I thought he was so handsome in that movie. And it's like, from that point on, I was like, oh yeah, this Billy Crudup guy, he's cool. He's great in this movie.
For me, I mentioned watching me and our dear friends back home, fans of the show, getting really stoned and watching Jesus' Son, which is a wild movie, almost kind of similar to this. Like, it's very vignette-y, but he's in that, and he plays a character simply named Fuckhead.
Funny enough, my nickname at boarding school. Yeah. That's so weird.
And you have Jack Black in it, and it's a name that's going to stick. You get a chance, watch that movie. It's very good.
And also interestingly, Will, like you said that you're not a fan of twisters, but while shooting in Alabama, location filming in Alabama was delayed by inclement weather because there was a tornado watch issued. So twisters tried to be a part of this movie, my friend.
Tried to ruin this movie and they failed.
It's like it's funny. It's kind of Terry Gilliam. This movie, you can see Terry Gilliam directing this movie as well. Of course, it would have been a little bit wonky, a bit crazier, and there would have been a big foot that would have come in and gone. But like, but yeah, I mean,
giant marionette puppets. Yeah.
I think that Tim Burton was the right man for the job. I think for this one. Like, there's very few times when I'll say you hear that Spielberg's name was attached to a movie, and you go, oh, I like that they went with the other guy. Usually, I'd be like, oh man, can you imagine if Spielberg directed this? Yeah. But like, I think in this case, Because I think the only other, like, can you imagine if Robert Zemeckis had got a hold of this movie?
It would have been a CGI disaster.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. Is like I said, there's another guy that's just lost his mojo. In my opinion, he's like, I can't remember the last good movie he directed. Maybe Flight.
Maybe 80s Zemeckis would have killed
for sure.
it, but
Yes.
But yeah,
post used cars.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell as the Ewan McGregor role. Oh, I want to change my answer to Kurt Russell.
Yeah.
Somebody older.
No, wait. Rooster Cogburn. There we go. No, wait. But it's funny. This movie is, for as like over the top as it is, it's still very restrained, but it's constantly enjoyable. Like the whole time, there weren't parts where I was like, it didn't take me out of it, or I didn't like it, or it got too sappy. Because you're right, it does jump back and forth. I was in it the entire time and had a blast watching it.
Like the sappier, slower, bit more overdone version of this is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Right.
You know, same sort of stuff. He goes off to war. He goes off in situations. It's got something a bit crazy because he ages backwards. It's like, that is a movie I watched once and then I was like, oh, I enjoyed it, but I don't think I'll ever watch that movie.
It's not my favorite Fincher movie. No.
Yeah.
It's not mine either. But then I was listening to a podcast about it the other day and I'm like, maybe I should go back. It's one of those movies that I think everybody sort of experienced when we experienced it. Fincher was white hot at that time. You got Brad Pitt, Cate Blanchett, and we all watched it and it got nominated for Oscars and we're all very impressed with the special effects. But I find it interesting that we haven't, as a society, revisited this movie. And I think we are all remembering it wrong. So I'm like, because
are you talking about Big Fish or?
I'm talking about Benjamin Button, but I was connecting it to Big Fish because it's the same thing that you said, Ryan, about Big Fish, is that you feel like you misremembered what it was.
Definitely.
But when you went back, you're like, oh, actually, it is a good time, and it doesn't suck you. You know, it's not a bummer, and it's like, and then like Will, like you're saying,
it's very sweet. Yeah.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't go Tim Burton, doesn't go crazy in it. It's like it's just everyone's having a good time. Like like Steve Buscemi.
Steve Buscemi. I love him.
Yeah.
He's great.
Steve
that
Buscemi.
bank robbery scene that caught me off
so
guard.
good.
That was great. He's so good in it.
And
someone you would normally like, and he's casting like these people all fit into this Burton kind of universe, right? Like he's got actors that are, this is again before, I don't know why Johnny Depp's not in this movie.
Right, everyone else.
But you've like, is this also the first one that has Marion Cotillard and the other one? And
Helen Bonham
Carter? Yes.
Yeah.
Like I thought they were the same person. I don't fucking know.
I barely remember Marion
Cotillard.
Cotillard.
Marion Collard Greens.
Yeah, in this movie as well. I mean, because it does.
She's not in it a ton, but
it does bounce around. It does bounce around a lot, and it also, because you are watching a fairy tale at times, you're just like, what is going on? Like, but it just, I think it is.
Why is he attracted to an 8-year-old? Who can say?
But it is just
weird.
Like,
to be fair, it is the other way around.
Yeah, and the math adds up as she keeps going. I did have a question about that scene because just something I didn't clock. That scene happens when he visits like this utopian like town, right?
Spectre, yeah.
Right. Is it implied like that's heaven? Like he has died, but they keep saying like it's not your time, and that's him escaping death because they're like, well, you'll come back. And am I misremembering that?
Yeah, it was kind of hard to sort of pin that down as well because it's like time's working differently at Spectre. Like, so Will, what's your take? Help us out here. What's your take on Spectre and how it works?
So yeah, in the movie it represents kind of something different. In the book, it's pretty clear that it's supposed to be like temptation, like it's the temptation for this, because he only goes there once in the book, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be like, oh, he was tempted by this perfect town and he went away and he decided like, no, I gotta go out for adventure. It's like the thing he did after school before he got like a real job. In the movie, I think it's not supposed to be as literal as that. It's supposed to be like, hey, you have a chance to settle down here and life is nice and easy here. And then he makes a choice to go away. And then years later when he comes back, he just kind of feels bad. There's all these people that he met before. Now they're kind of like, their town has fallen apart and he's in a position to help. So I don't think it's not literal like, oh, this is paradise. I think it's just supposed to represent the life he could
It's
have.
the George Bailey
chosen.
situation. Like this is the town. Like the town needed him, and like this is what happened without me.
He literally comes there from a fork in the road, you know.
Right.
And then he comes back to the you know, the thing. So it's okay, I can see that. It's like,
but it is different in the book. In the book, it much more is supposed to be like, this is paradise. And I kind of like I said, I think John August really refined that story and made it better. Because it's not super literal in the film.
Now, when did you read the book based on when you had seen the film?
I did see the film first. And then when I worked at the high school, we taught, I forget how it fit into the curriculum, but we would read the book Big Fish. So I read it like 9 years in a row, like teaching at the high school.
Nice.
We read it to the class. So I've read through it numerous times, but it's been a decade plus. That's my memory of it. So I did watch the film first, but I still think it's much better than the book is.
Oh wow, that's a rare. Usually that's not the case.
Yeah, I know. It's very often anybody ever says that, but it's a bit of a.
Unless it's the novelization of Eraser.
Yeah,
right?
Obviously,
100%. That's the greatest of them all. Yeah, it's fun. I would say in this one, it's one of those movies that, like, you know, and I like this. A week into this now, I'm just like, would we recommend it? This is one I'm like going,
definitely.
It's a fun watch.
I thought for sure I was like, both of your movie picks, I was like, I really am just again, like, you really got to be when we're doing this podcast, you really want to be in the mood to watch this movie. You want to like absorb it all that you can so we can talk about it and learn about it. And these two movies, like, I'm just not in the mood, but I'm so glad that I did watch them and had this like this takeaway that these movies I'm so glad I watched. They're great.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about this podcast is that, because I know exactly what you mean, and that's why there are times that I haven't watched a movie that have sat there on my list for years.
Exactly, yeah.
Because I'm not in the mood. How do I know what mood I need to be in to watch a movie I've never seen before? I don't know.
You're like, not so much that you're not in the mood, or you're like, I know how this movie's going to make me feel, and I don't want to feel that way. You know?
Yeah, I mean, right. But sometimes are we wrong? Because Big Fish is a movie that is like, you think is going to be a slog, and you think maybe, is this going to be a bit silly?
I think it's a movie you can throw on anytime, honestly.
Yeah,
now that I've
it's
seen
silly
it,
in a good way.
Yeah.
It's fun, and then like when it does come together with that final scene of Billy Crudup finally like going, all right, he's telling the story of how his dad died to his dad, and it's funny and fun and sweet, and you got like you carrying him and the car chase and the ring and everyone's there, and then you just turn into a very big fish.
Yeah, well, that part where it like cuts to Morpheus and he says he's beginning to believe. And then he's like, everything he's saying is coming true, is happening. And at that point, like, I'm like, wait, what is happening? Fish the whole time? That's when I lost it. Take it back. This movie sucks. Get out of here.
I did love it though when the fish flew up to the sky and Rage Against the Machine started playing. Like that was
yeah, that was fucking metal, dude. Hell yeah,
pretty epic.
Mm-hmm.
That's a better version of the movie.
How to ruin a movie.
I will say I didn't like Big Fish Revolutions or Big Fish Reloaded. Those got away from me.
You didn't like Real Big Fish? Very popular band in the 90s. Maybe you've heard of them.
Ska Band, right?
Ska Band's right.
Oh my God, felt like they were in every movie for a while, and like
they were in Basketball, and that was it.
That's right. Yeah. Well, maybe I've watched Basketball 100 times.
Yeah.
Where does that take place? Write that down.
Yeah.
I think we almost chose it for 1 week. Yeah, and it's good, and I like the way that it gives us that ending, the imaginary ending, and then it takes us to the actual funeral. And that's the only time in the whole movie where it looks like a Burton movie, because it's all black. It's all.
And also, why has no one like really aged? Like if he was 18, everyone else would also be very dead, right?
That is the one kind of like.
Or is that another fish story? I don't even know.
Whoa. Yeah. Because Steve Buscemi looks like he's roughly the same age, and the only one who looks like they've aged a lot is the Danny DeVito character. Everyone else looks roughly the same as when they last.
Danny DeVito looks like he looks currently in this movie.
Right.
So anyway,
by that I mean, awesome. Yeah.
just stopped blasting. Yeah.
But no, I'm throwing, and also like say the music, it's Danny Elfman, but it's like it doesn't feel overtly Danny Elfman. You know, like sometimes he's just have a lot of fun, and dun, 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 dun. You know what I mean. You get that flavor of Elfman. In this case, I almost sort of
didn't even notice the music.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. Exactly.
It's very understated for Danny Elfman. Yeah,
and for Tim Burton, it's almost like they're both of them kind of like, should we pretend like we're normal people? Do you want to just make a normal movie that's a bit crazy? Yeah, okay, let's do it. It's fine. But yeah, no, Dig, I'm glad you chose this one, man. Yeah. And it's got the Alabama dripping all through it. That's
what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's very much about Alabama. It's shot in Alabama. It's got a lot of those sort of vibes and that sort of stuff. That it was a tip-top pick, man. Good for you, Will. Yeah. Congratulations.
Yeah. Finally.
Yeah.
Welcome to the fucking show. I'm sorry. I'm just like I'm padding time till I have to talk about my pick.
Oh, don't worry. We're saving that one. We're gonna move over. We're gonna talk about Ollie's pick, Ollie's grown-up pick, Ollie's Oscar-winning
prestige drama.
Yes, it was, and it is. It is.
Yeah, I know. I did jazz hands when I said that.
and unfortunately, it is funnier than your pick, Ryan. Like, so that tells you how unfunny.
This is another one of my picks where I'm like, oh no, I've Ernested all over again.
If you measured all the laughs in Selma versus Alabama.
I will say, usually every Monday I'll post a video as That Englishman in Texas or to my Ollie Pettigrew Facebook, and it's always talking about movies. At some point I'm talking movies and I say, oh, by the way, we've got the new episode of my podcast out. The Ernest video, me talking about Ernest being the worst movie I've ever seen, 250,000 views so far. People, even now, I think 3 weeks later, are still jumping in the comments. Some of the movies being listed in the comments as worst movies ever are, honestly, they are wrong. But people are coming to bat for Ernest. They're like, no, that is a good movie. I tell you, it's been my most successful movie video. The last two that I've done for the podcast have both hit 250,000, which is hilarious. Because people are like, oh, no, I have to get involved in this, and Ernest is a good movie. I'm like, no, it is not.
So what you're saying is we could sell a fuck ton of Ernest shirts?
But then I had somebody else come in and they go, oh man, I hate The Hunt for Red October, and Master Commander's a piece of shit. And I go, you're naming some of my favorite movies right now. Like,
first of all, you're wrong and I hate you.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Who came up with that? Ben Shapiro came up with those opinions?
Does that person have no ears and no eyes?
But then, Ernest, the banger. So there you go. You have been somewhat vindicated when it comes to Ernest.
I said I knew it was going to be a very divisive, thing for the audience, and I stand by that. Like, people really love that movie.
Bearing that in mind, I kind of regret not picking Ernest Goes to Selma, because I feel like
dude.
Man. Scene with him and MLK in the garbage truck. Yeah, come on.
Know what I mean, King?
Yeah.
But like, let's
how do you delete someone else's podcast? Jesus Christ.
But yeah, let's jump into talking about some like the exact opposite of Big Fish. It's the most reliable narrator is the movie, and it's a movie that has taken great care to approach this subject matter. And like I said, I didn't know, so I'm like, am I about to watch an MLK biopic? No, we're not. It's a snatch in time. It's a moment. It's a big moment in American history. It's a traumatic moment for a lot of people. It's a moment that a lot of people saw go down on television. And it's a moment that pushed America forward, as far as it could go at the time. And we joked about it earlier, but also it's not funny. But in 2024, we see that they're trying, this is a country that's trying to take these things back. They're trying to move backwards in sort of some ways that I think this was such a great time for me to watch this movie and to also like learn. I felt like I learned a lot by watching this movie. For you guys, what? So this was all a first time watch for everybody?
Yeah. For me, yeah.
So what did you expect before going in, and were your expectations met or not?
Like you were saying, I also expect one, I didn't know what to expect, but also I had a preconceived notion of what I thought this would be as a film. Like I thought it was going to be like a biopic where it's his kind of like his whole life, his upbringing, his troubles, all leading up to his like famous speech, let's say. Right. And kind of like a music biopic typically does. Like, you know, here's, you know, you've seen them all before, but it like, you're right. It takes that one, that small slice of time and stretches it into this film, and all of these things happen, these key moments, and it's incredible to see a film, you know, done that way. Versus like a traditional, like, here's Martin Luther King as a baby, and then here's him starting a band, and then here's sort of leading up to the show, and here's him doing
Hollywoodizing it a bit.
Yeah, like,
you know, whereas like I think what really connects to this movie is that when someone dies in this movie, you realize that was a person that died.
This was one of those movies that opens with the death of a child that I was not happy to see.
Right.
As it does. And,
oh my God, that was so shocking.
Yeah.
I jumped. Like, so that's the thing. So actually, the movie opens with him doing the Nobel Peace Prize, which apparently was the very last scene they shot. Also, by the way, all my joking about twisters and stuff, there is a Texas storm outside. So if I suddenly just go black, it's because the power's gone out. Just FYI.
You're really committing to the bit, man.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wow.
You're just holding onto the desk and your legs are flailing.
Don't need to convince me you're a fan.
Yeah.
But
save me, Glenn Howard.
The movie then sort of like, we just suddenly we're there with these 4 young girls. And that's a very, very, this is kind of what I mean. Is like, but just, I jumped out of my skin when it happened. And I think, you know, a big part of that is me not knowing. I don't know that part of history. I didn't know about that bombing. And that's how that movie just got my attention. I went, wow. After that, I was like, oh my God. And then from that point on, you know, I'm watching this sort of like historical record, but the very next person that turns up, I'm like, is that fucking Oprah Winfrey? And then I'm like, oh my God, it's Oprah Winfrey. And then it's just like, from that point on, one of the most incredibly stacked, I bet people in Hollywood were fighting to get into this movie, to be honest. Yeah. And you know, there are some movies that they try to do the biopic and it falls flat. This one, it's just on a knife edge, and I think it's nailing it. I'm like, I don't think this movie is for everyone, but I think it's a movie people should watch. I mean, what do you think? Like, what were you thinking going into the movie?
Yeah, I like Ava DuVernay. I think she's a fantastic director. So I had pretty high expectations when you picked this. I had not seen it before. I do think I had some of the same concerns, like, was this going to be a biopic or something? And it's really not. It's what I like when they do this more, which is more of just a snapshot of a period of time as opposed to covering the entire history of something. But yeah, right from the opening scene, I was like, oh, I think I know what this is. I think this is where these girls get blown up. And then when that happened, I was like, oh God, all right. Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's hard to watch. Just if you know the history, you're just like, oh, I know where this is gonna go.
Yeah,
there were some things like the Lakeith Stanfield character I didn't actually know about that person in real life, and that was incredibly heartbreaking. But I was just amazed that this didn't get nominated for more like acting awards, because everybody is so good in this.
Yeah,
and the performances are just amazing.
I think, I mean, it was, you know, before Lakeith Stanfield's character is shot. So again, that he's not a character. He's a real person. This is actually what happened. Right. But I think that is what I think really kind of helped me from the outside, kind of, one, understand, but two, also be okay. Instead of it just being a sort of a small character or minor character, it's like, if it's anybody, it's Oprah Winfrey as a small, like, and you go, okay, this is a person from history. Lakeith Stanfield. So when Lakeith Stanfield's character is shot, I'm like, I'm understanding now. I'm actually like, I'm on board, I'm invested because I recognize all of these top draw actors and actresses, and they're doing a great job. That, you know, that's why when I got to the end, I was like, oh, that's John Lewis. Oh my God. Like I just completely gone over my head, that I was just like so much more invested and on board, and also kind of understanding, because when you have a cast of that magnitude, you know, you can understand how another director would have made just a MLK story, and then there's just other people. Whereas in this case, they very much understood that no, MLK existed, but he had this core group of people and other people from other groups and his wife, and all of them, I feel like, got their share, their representation in this movie. And that's why, like, when you look into it, again, I mentioned it earlier, but there are some, like, it got this rating of like the most historically accurate movie ever made.
Oh.
You know, like, so some people are kind of going, well, they said that LBJ and MLK's relationship, there have been people from the Johnson sort of like family going, well, he was a friend to the people, to the, you know, the African American community, and he had a very great respect for MLK, because there was just a little bit of, like, you know, tension in it, but it's kind of like in a way that LBJ's like, I don't want to get into this, let's get through the election. And I love that MLK was just like, no, we're going to talk about this now. I'm going to make this a big issue, and you're going to have to fucking deal with it. And I was like, oh man, MLK was awesome. I was like, I like
he had like a direct line to the White House.
Yeah, nice move, you know?
Yeah, and it was interesting to see this portrayal of LBJ, because he was an interesting president. He was a very kind of abrasive guy. He was very folksy and very charming, but he was notoriously kind of like a difficult guy to deal with, and he really knew how to like command the situation no matter like what he was in. He famously like would have walk and talk meetings with people where he would keep talking with somebody until he went to the bathroom, and make the person watch him as he would like take a dump right in front of them and like negotiate with people. Like he would just, that was LBJ. He would just do
start
like
doing that.
It's a power move right there.
It's the ultimate power move, because
Hold my
what are
hair
you gonna
back.
say to the president who's taking a shit right in front of you?
Fuck
You know, you gonna tell him no? But it was interesting to see this portrayal of LBJ, where it's like it kind of makes you gain even more respect from MLK, that like he's able to like go toe to toe with someone like Johnson, who is that notorious in his negotiations, and just be like, I'm not backing down, man.
But those scenes were acted so well, because you can tell how like tenuous their kind of relationship was. It's like
I think it's a more honest version than the Johnson
like,
family would like to admit to.
Yeah, but
you know.
I mean, it's interesting, like, you know, when you look at the cast list, let's say on Wikipedia, like I'm looking at it right now, and you sort of go through, I mean, there's 19, or if not more, 21 characters who each of them have a sort of attribution bracket, and they all have their own Wikipedia pages. You know, that's what I mean, that we are dealing with a cast of 25, 30 actual historical people, people who existed, people who in some cases died, people that changed history. And it's like, what a responsibility, one, of a movie, but two, like, credit to the director for being able to juggle that.
Yeah, to put all these pieces together, like to make it all fit and to have it be this accurate is this movie would take, like, Stanley Kubrick couldn't make this movie, it would take 100 years.
It's like, I can think of a worse version of this movie, still a movie that I enjoyed, but it's very much a sort of the worst white version of this movie. It's kind of the Trial of the Chicago 7.
I was just thinking about that.
You know, because it does the same thing. It takes real people. It does the same thing. It takes real moments, but it's also got, you know, and don't get me wrong, I think he's one of my favorite writers, but Aaron Sorkin, you know, he's almost overwritten it, you know, once it gets into court. And whereas in this case, every opportunity where it could have decided to be flashy with the cinematography, like the guy was just looking up, this is the same cinematographer as Arrival, you know, like, and so the guy clearly knows how to be flashy and look amazing and things like, he did Solo, a Star Wars story. But in this case, I feel like everyone is just really, really getting into this movie, their roles. They're just playing it real and genuine and straight up. and how would this person be, and how would they walk, and where would this look like, and the lighting is just, what would it look like if it was outside or day or this, I think it helps the movie. It's just
definitely. It's funny too. Like, you think when this movie came out, like the term Oscar buzz, like everyone was talking about this movie, and then it just kind of like goes away, and no one talks about this historical film anymore until they start a podcast.
Right. I actually, I think one of the things that DuVernay decides to do that really helps this movie is I think she just trusts that the historical material that exists is dramatic enough in and of itself that she doesn't have to like create any Hollywood moments or gussy it up. There's a lot of moments in here where people are very mad at MLK for how he's like handling things, and they're like really like chastising him, like, you're backing down here, you shouldn't be giving ground here, and it makes him feel more real. It doesn't feel like a Hollywood version of the character.
That's a great point. That's a great point, because I felt the same way
when they take that first march and it's all like building up to this, and he gets to the end and he's like, and turns around, and everyone's like, dude, what the hell, man? Like, because I took the day off for this.
and I like that they showed the fallout of that, of people being like really upset, like, we missed our moment. We, hindsight, we live in the future, so we know like ultimately what these moments meant, but at the time when they're in the thick of it, you could see, I like that they're bringing up, like, we just killed our moment because we backed down and we walked away. I think that makes it more powerful.
They don't make the mistake of like making him some perfect mythical character.
No,
right? It very much just shows the guy. It shows his wife. It shows, that's a really. I'm glad you mentioned that, Will, because that's exactly kind of how I was feeling when I was watching the movie as well. It's like, I kind of feel like I understand more about Martin Luther King by watching this movie, because usually it'd be like I'd have to go and find some documentaries to watch to like, okay, I've seen the movie, but like, let's go and get what really
and that would only paint like one side, like you're saying, it would only paint like one side of that, you get every side of it is of him as a real person, like the struggles he had in his home life, and it just makes it so much more grounded.
When J. Edgar Hoover rocks up and like the FBI starts sort of like messing. I like that they really did address a lot of things that happen, and again, without making this movie 5 hours long.
No,
it's just like well written, well directed, well edited. Congratulations!
It very well could have gone off the rails, like you said, and could have been like very much like studio executives could have meddled too much, and this could have been like a 3-hour thing or longer or whatever, and chase sequences and all that
we have a car chase in the middle.
Schwarzenegger shows up, he starts racing, like, you get it,
Well, now hold on. we might be onto something.
Like, I just described like a Rick and Morty episode, like just easily diluted it,
but I think
get to the Selma.
See, we've got it. We've got the next banger movie. I've talked about on here before. There are movies that deal with race issues and stuff that feel like the edges have been sanded off, and a lot of like the movies we've seen that have been like Disney produced historical biopics and stuff, where I'm just like, there's just something missing.
What was that movie? I can never remember.
Every movie we do on the podcast.
Remember the Titans.
Yes, that's exactly and that's when Will made that comment as well.
And this, you could tell, is a movie where, okay, they didn't have to listen to Bob Iger and be like, can you make it like 20% nicer? They were allowed to tell the story as it happened in real life.
And
this wasn't like Martin Scorsese's Selma,
right.
Like a heightened version of
the big moment of when they get charged by the police and they get gassed and beaten, and it's like, again, like that legendary moment of like John Lewis is like where he's kind of like seen sort of and interesting, like, 'cause I'm watching it and it's like, and then it cuts because MLK's back with his family because like his family's been getting messed with, and in that version, the Bob Iger Disney PG-13 version of Selma, he would have been there. They would have changed history a bit. They don't.
It would have been one march. They would have combined the events.
Yeah, totally.
It would have treated the audience like idiots in a way. Like it would have just simplified it or streamlined it and not been true to the actual story.
And I think
doesn't
that's credit to the people making this movie. Everybody
Definitely.
involved, like in the acting as well. You know, that everyone's like, no. This is, you know, so many of these actors, interesting enough, so many of the actors are actually English, but a lot of the African American actors, this is something that they're, you know, it's not even that long ago. That's the thing about things like civil rights, about things like this, is that people's grandparents were around when they were segregated. They fought literally for the rights that they still fight for today. And it's like, that's why I think movies like this are important. I think it's why it's important that children and kids and stuff, they understand and learn this stuff. Because it's easy to forget for some people. It's easy for history to be whitewashed in more than one way. Yeah. But like in this particular case, they knew the assignment and they executed it.
Yeah. It's, you think it's almost like a miracle this movie got made. It's like, it's crazy to think that studio execs would sign off on a film like this, and this movie made quite a bit of money. No?
So it was a $20 million movie that made nearly 70 million. But that's kind of what I mean. Like, was everyone getting paid scale with this cast? And everyone's like, all right, I want to do this. You know, like I imagine that many people were doing this for like.
I was gonna say it's a miracle we didn't get a sequel, but unfortunately, we're currently living in it. Oh boy.
Well, I think you know, this is also a lot of people who are bigger names now, but like, you know, Coleman Domingo is like only recently blowing up. Like he was in stuff for a long time, but he's only recently getting, same thing with Tessa Thompson. Like it was kind of like after.
Yeah, she's barely in this film, right?
She's in it.
Yeah, she kind of
she's like
standing off to the side for most of it.
Yeah. Spends a lot of time just standing nearby. His wife, Carmen Ejogo, I never heard of her. Apparently she's a British musical artist. I was like, really? Oh shit. So like, so you've got, the lead, his wife, the president, they're all British.
And a breakout performance by Oprah. I mean, she'll go on to do great things.
You should do something. Yeah. She was great in this movie. And it's also like, but I think that's another great point. That's Oprah Winfrey. That's billionaire Oprah Winfrey. That's like, you know, but everyone seems to put their egos aside for this movie and just said, no, let's tell this movie right. And then I was just like, you know, same thing like we were just talking about the cinematography, and I'm reading up on the visual style, and it's the cinematographer. He likes to use natural light. You know what I mean? So that's why, again, it comes back to that whole.
It's got a great look to it.
Best looking documentary I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Is how I would sort of like put this, but it's like, they clearly put a lot of painstaking effort to do this, and for the fact that while most of the movie was shot in Georgia, that final to actually go to the place, go to Selma, to the bridge, and to recreate that moment, I can only imagine what it must have felt like as an actor. You know, be, you know, no need to get into a mindset. You're standing. It's like shooting a Gettysburg movie while at Gettysburg. You know, it's like what, you know, when they shot the movie Dunkirk, you know, at Dunkirk, when they shot Saving Private Ryan. It's just these moments where
you're on like hallowed ground, you know?
Yeah, as an actor, like, this is where these people fought. This is where they fought and died. And I think, you know, I'm annoyed at myself for not watching this movie for 10 years, and I'm so happy we do this podcast because I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I watched that movie.
Yeah. Like, that said, it's not a movie I'm like looking forward to watching again.
No. Yeah,
no, it's very, very sad.
Yeah, like
I watched the movie and I came in and like Mrs. was like, oh yeah, so how was it? I was like, I don't know if you know this, but civil rights in America, pretty tough. People died. No, it's not a comedy, but an important movie. I think. I'm glad we did it. I would recommend it to a lot of people. And I almost feel like some people need to be made to watch it.
You know? Right. Yeah.
That's the problem.
And to your point about it being not that long ago, I mean, John Lewis only recently died a couple years ago.
It's only like 4 years.
He was around while this movie was getting filmed.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he was like, you know, asked about it, or so I wish I had thought to look up some interviews, see if he talked about the movie at all or consulted on it.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, that's how recent it is. Is like the people who are depicted as young people in this movie, a lot of them are even still around.
Yeah.
It's not ancient history at all.
It's wild. It's wild, and I think, yeah, so happy we watched him. It was a good.
I thought it was crazy at the end where MLK turns into a fish and then swims away and launches into the sky. That was wild to me.
It's a little artsy, but you know.
Well, I did like after. Did you guys stick around for after the credits when Nick Fury
shows up?
Martin Luther King.
I didn't want to say, but MLK, he did put together quite the team.
He did. It was It was
So,
definitely.
Much to my great chagrin, this movie did have my two favorite tropes: the opening death of a child, and the assembly of a team, and the end credits where it says they went on to do so and so.
Yeah.
Oh man,
the big three.
MLK will return.
Yeah. Oh, the one.
I did have that joke where I was like, I had to watch this movie in two parts. I think I started like very late and I was dozing off. So I think I had a half hour left. And I was texting you guys. I'm like, I missed the last half hour of the movie, and I sure hope it turns out okay for that MLK fella.
Yeah.
And then no one responded to me for 2 days.
But I also like that, you know, you'd think, you know, I walked into this movie expecting that, you know, of course, the end of the movie is going to end on
the speech,
his assassination and stuff like that.
Oh,
but it's not. It's just, it's really more about like that moment and what it meant and how it brought, you know, how it did bring literally people together. You know, that when people saw what happened, the people that came to Selma to join, all the different clergy, and, you know, and then you get that little, like, you know, that sort of white female character that's like popping up throughout the movie, and then at the end they go, "Oh yeah, she was
died right after this." I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy
Immediately
shit!"
after.
Oh my god!
Fucking hell,
I've never seen like an end tag like that before in my fucking life.
Yeah, she was
Oh,
murdered
shit.
4 hours after this movie ends. I'm like, Jesus.
Whoa! And she wasn't even the last person that she was like the second person.
Yeah.
It was.
I will say, in my completely fucked up viewing brain, I was thinking of the scene in Coming to America where the barbershop, he's talking about the time he met Dr. Martin Luther King. I was like, kind of hoping for like a little Easter egg where he just turns the corner and punches him in the stomach. A little bit.
They no way.
Part of me was like,
Martin Luther King.
I was like, oh, they're not gonna do it, but kind of hope they do. But they didn't. They took the coward's route, I guess, and made a serious movie.
So, right.
They told what actually.
We can add that into Will's new TikTok/YouTube channel that we recut movies to make them better.
There we go.
Like, oh, I thought you were somebody else. I'm like,
Martin Luther King. All right. So from an incredibly important, historically accurate, cast-stacked movie,
Big Fish.
we have to move on now.
Oh.
To Ryan's choice. Where
We don't have to.
we're gonna.
That's it.
Why did
everybody.
you save mine
What a
for
great week.
last? What were you thinking?
I've been looking forward to this.
Oh, father.
Let's get into sweet Alabama. It is, I would say, by the numbers rom-com, but like I pointed out at the beginning, it doesn't have too much of the com in the rom. It's mostly rom with a little bit of like it's got a little bit of Big Fish to it, because it's got that kind of mystical element of them getting struck by lightning at the beginning, and you know that whole kind of thing. But
I did interpret the movie as the kids died right away, and this is hell. The rest of the movie is just those kids in hell.
Yeah.
This is them just lying on the beach, like dying, and in those last moments, they just flash forward, and this is what they imagined. Wow, those children deserve to die.
Honestly,
this is the height of their imagination. Yeah, no big loss there, everybody. You know.
So, all right. So, had anyone else seen this movie before? I watched it in 2003, I think. So, no one else had seen this movie.
Oh no. I mean, I've seen thousands of these movies, but not this movie. You know.
Right. You know, unless because don't get me wrong, I have plenty of time for a good rom-com. When it's a great rom-com, I love them. You know, when they're funny, when they get into it, and it's like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is one I always bring up. But I go, that is great. That is funny. They get into it. It's easy watch.
Did you say How to Lose a Guy in 10 Gays?
Yeah, that's what I just heard.
Freudian slip.
Again,
We got a
better
simple plan to
movie.
get rid of this guy. We got 10 dudes from Grinder.
50
A
First
lot of
Gays.
box wine.
Gaze and Confused. Sure, it's all there. Gaze of Thunder. I can keep
going. Again, all better movies, Ryan.
Yeah.
Hang on, well, that's the new TikTok. That's write that down.
Gaze of Thunder, I think.
Gaze of Thunder. It sounds like a movie I've seen before, but
With that Thor 4.
I can't put my finger on it. I'm done.
It is my
just doing
bookmark
everything to
tab
avoid
on-
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Your algorithms are fucked.
But like, for me, I mean, so I towards the end of the movie, like, was actively sort of shouting at the movie, like with like Mrs. was in the room, and I'm just going, for example, one of my biggest issues with the movie is Patrick Dempsey's character. He's literally like, and it's no surprise that he goes on to play in Enchanted, but he's like
Prince Charming.
Prince Charming, right? Yeah. And so he's literally the prince. Yeah. He's the daughter of the queen, the mayor, and he's handsome and rich and caring and romantic.
Yeah.
And just there's not one flaw to his character. And then when she finally fucking goes, no, you know what? I'm married and I'm actually going to go with my husband. And he goes, oh, and then just like gives her a hug and a kiss and then walks through the door like no problem.
I will say, like, it's so funny you say that, because now that I'm re-looking at this movie, like, oh, it's just like a shitty fairy tale, right? But like in a modern setting. Like,
it's like a Hallmark movie before Hallmark movies were really a thing.
That's you perfectly know. There are even shots in this like early on where it almost looks like they put Vaseline on the lens. Like it looks blurry and dreamy and weird choices were made. But holy shit, this movie fucking sucks.
But like Patrick Dempsey had nothing to do in that movie. No. Just Patrick, can you put a suit on and be handsome? I mean, I would have been maybe a little pissed if turns out that my fiance, I can't marry her because she is married. Then I've flown my mother. I'm a politician, and we're at the wedding, and I maybe said that's a bit of a dick move.
They don't do the traditional route of I expect this to be. There are parts of the way they do certain things in this film that are unexpected. Like you've seen so many of these movies, you expect the current Patrick Dempsey character to be like a huge fucking asshole. But no, he's not. He's perfectly fine, perfectly understanding. Like he's cool. He's not cheating on her. They even set it up that she's with all of these models. I'm like, oh, she's gonna go back home. He's gonna sleep with this model. She's gonna fall in love. But she's already married. I didn't see that coming. So there are certain things that they did that kind of bend that narrative a little bit out of the scope of a typical romantic comedy, but it still falls very fucking flat.
Well, it's just because he is, you were saying he's perfect, this, perfect, that, and I go, no, he's just literally perfect. The character doesn't have a flaw in any way, and that's what really, I go, this doesn't make sense. This isn't real. A real person like this doesn't exist. This isn't how they react, and that's what I mean. That's what was really pissing me off about it.
In New York in 2002, I don't think so.
There's a lot of hay made about like how many films are like male power fantasies, like a John Wick or any superhero movie. This is the opposite. This is the female power fantasy where she's rich and famous, powerful. She's already married to one hot guy, but she's about to get married to another hot guy. Goes back, falls in love with the first hot guy again, wants to be with him, but it's okay. The second hot guy is fine with it.
Right.
There's no consequences for any of her bad decisions.
First hot guy has spent the last 15 years of his life or whatever trying to improve himself for her. Yep. He's completely changed his life so he can win her back. And it's just, I mean,
no matter how much she sucks, because she does suck in this movie, by the way.
Yeah.
She's very mean to like her family,
and she's got a pretty torrid past. Like they keep drip feeding like she was a criminal and did
killed a cat via bomb.
Yeah, she outed her gay friend.
Yeah, we'll get to the bar scene. We'll get to the bar scene. Don't worry.
And
the only thing I remember.
Consequences for any of it. Nothing. So this is the female power fantasy movie.
Yeah, well, it's like the white female fantasy movie because like
Yes.
the only black character in a movie set in Alabama is the gay character from New York that comes down, like her friend, the
Yeah.
stylist friend. I'm like,
Titus Andromedon, sure.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but not, but yes, but not, but yes.
Yeah.
But very much.
And it was like,
Better movie.
yeah, no.
See, I thought she
Oh,
was going to
man.
go back home to Alabama, become the sheriff of the town. That's starting the
Carry a big stick everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, yes. Again, I mean,
She
we're just
fights the
writing
Dixie Mob.
we're just writing better movies here. That's all that's happening.
But yeah, and like we were talking about, so first movie shot in New York after the September 11 attacks, and I feel like, yeah, this this movie is so.
It's a very much a product of its time too.
It
I
is
think
so
like
2002.
it's the
Even
I
the
said
hair.
in the text. It's the most 2002 text
It's
thread.
like-
She's quirky.
Yeah,
She's
very much.
quirky.
She's got that hairstyle that in the 2000s we all thought looked great. That kind of
Yeah.
like razor cut flicking out at the side kind of thing.
This has the opening too, where again, like he keeps setting up like it sets up that he's too perfect that something horrible is gonna happen. And it never does. Like he proposed, like he's like, oh, we're gonna be late to this thing. He rents out he takes her to Tiffany's and they just like unload all these fucking rings. It's wild to me. It's or like she gets back to her apartment and it's like covered in rose petals.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have to imagine everyone would be like, I gotta fucking clean this shit up.
Yeah, and it's also like,
Yeah.
who got into my
Who
house?
broke into my
I don't feel
Yeah.
safe in my own
Oh,
apartment.
You hired
you,
strangers
yeah.
to put, dead flower parts
Post
all over.
9/11, get the fuck out of
Yeah.
here, man. That's crazy. That
What a
is
different time.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I
on,
don't know.
bring on like Will, like you are our resident actual filmmaker, actual
You're
writer.
our resident 9/11 expert.
Right. So here's the geopolitics behind this film. Man,
Oh, fuck me, guys! I've just read that there is a mid-credit sequence. I'm sure you guys were like me that the second that movie was done, just
yeah.
ended.
The moment I saw directed by, all right, cool, shutting it off.
There is
Done.
there is a mid-credit sequence that shows they have a baby daughter.
Yeah.
Oh my god! And then
Cool.
okay, and
Yes.
Andrew, the perfect character, does get engaged to a girl named Erin Vanderbilt. So I guess she's part of the. But that's what I mean. This movie was
Who cares?
Ah,
lazy. It was lazy.
how funny.
I think there's a throwaway thing too where like it's implied that she had a kid with her current husband that they lost. They like lost a child.
That's right. Was that actually a
Was it a miscarriage or did they?
point? Or did they just leave
Actually
the child
lose it.
somewhere?
I think
Was
the
it-
kids saw
These
this movie
two,
and just
these two
killed themselves.
dumbasses, I totally believe would be like, go to a gas station and forget a baby. I'd buy it.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. That's right because
Yeah.
she goes, no, I remember that's right. When she goes, that's the night I got pregnant, and he goes, oh, thanks for. Yeah, that's when she's being a dick that night, where
Yeah.
she
At the
outs the
bar,
fact that she got pregnant way too young, but did end up losing the baby, I believe, and then outs her gay friend while she's just being sloppy drunk and like
That's
you're
that's a
right, Will.
terrible, like,
She's a
horrible.
bit of a
Yeah.
dick in this movie.
Yeah, she sucks.
It
Like,
does have the one line I remember from the trailer. She's like, "Oh, you brought a baby to a bar.
Bar.
yeah.
Fuck you."
I mean, Murphy Brown is totally right for hating this girl.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah.
fully on her side. She's
I
right.
have to admit, when this movie came on and I saw her, I was like, "Holy shit, Martha Stewart's in this movie!" I completely forgot it was Murphy Brown, Candice Bergen.
She's
that's her
she's
name,
very
yes.
fun. I always liked her in that Boston Legal. She was in Boston Legal as well, wasn't it? James Spader and William Shatner.
Oh, right.
That show was very funny. Like
Yeah.
Mrs. and I, when we first met, that's a show that we would be watching together. And that movie was
It
good.
was just spaced in Boston Legal.
Yeah, mostly just spaced over and over again. I like Fred Ward. Fred Ward's fun. Like there's a bit like I like.
He's
that
always
Yeah, he's great.
I mean, the bit where like I did like that he's like a Confederate like war guy,
Yeah,
and
I
the bit where she goes walking out into the thing and she's like asking for help and everyone sort of sits up and talks and then dies again. Okay, I was like, all right, that's funny, and the fact that he's dressed like a Confederate general meeting, it's like, all right, that was funny.
But
Hard to
but
play
is
that
it
joke
like
today?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah. Still, like it's almost like it wasn't played for laughs. It was like unintentionally funny. Like I didn't find it funny. I wasn't like, oh, that's a good,
It
that's a
didn't.
joke.
The
Like
thing is,
didn't land.
2002. That
Yeah.
wasn't the big problem. In 2002, Americans were Americans, and everyone was scared of Muslims. That's the world that 2002 was. Whereas,
Right.
it's crazy how in 2024, if a movie came out and you've got, Civil War reenactors or like, like full on just Confederate flags in the background and stuff, I'm like, all right.
You're just describing Alex Garland's Civil War.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Yeah.
Which I cannot wait to see. Apparently the buzz on that movie is cuckoo banana pants bonkers.
I hear Ron Swanson's mustache operates a firearm. Can't wait.
Awesome.
But like, again, I remember, like, so Reese Witherspoon she's just an effortlessly charming woman.
Yeah.
And a great actress, which is like, I like the bit where she goes down to her fella's house and just turns on the Alabama. It's like, get your butt out here. And I'm like,
yeah,
please keep talking. Like, the British guy in me loves this accent. I listen to it all day. And like Josh Lucas, man, like, and who was it? What did you guys say? It was like,
we have Matthew McConaughey at home.
Yeah, it's not. I think Josh Lucas is a handsome dude.
Yeah, but I think if like it had a McConaughey in it, it would have elevated this movie slightly, but not really. I thought it would have mattered.
Well, yeah, I had said that this is a role that if they made this today, it would be that Top Gun 2. What's that guy's name?
Glenn Powell. Yeah,
Glenn
Powell. It would have been Glenn Powell in this.
And Sydney Sweeney.
For sure. Yeah. Again,
I mean, I haven't seen it, but it's still currently in theaters. But it's like Anyone But You. It's their rom-com. Is like they are $150 million now. Like they're So like,
well, you take the two most scientifically attractive people on the planet and put them in a movie where it's like, I'm not attracted to you.
Yeah, I think they were talking about it's like Sydney Sweeney is going to do a movie with Margot Robbie, and it's like it doesn't matter how shitty the movie is; it's going to make $1 billion.
Yeah. But it was like I saw someone retweet that it was on Twitter, and fuck, it's never going to be X to me. It's always going to be Twitter. And they were like saying, "Oh, I'd love to work." And the guy's idea was like, it's a guy in front of a whiteboard, and it just says, "Brokeback Mountain, but with girls."
Oh my god, the Don Draper,
So I'm like, okay.
Save that one for later.
The first $10 billion grossing movie.
That's cool. You only have to watch like the first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds.
And you're good. And then have a cigarette. So like any other comments about this movie? Because it's stupid. I mean, so for one of the funniest things. So Ryan has, this reputation of being the funniest human being on planet Earth. At least as far as I am concerned.
Not according to our audience.
And like Mrs. has in some ways has disowned him since the whole Ernest thing, but at the same time,
on my way back,
Mrs. She talks about Ryan in ways like, and I'm like, Mrs. You do realize I'm in the room and can hear you, like about how funny Ryan is. But it's in reference to because this movie does also feature one of the most attractive and sexiest British people, not me, but Rona Mitra. And what was it that you texted? I think it was. He said, "I could."
I would listen to her fart through a walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
I stand by that.
And it is so accurate. Rona Mitra does have one of those British accents that, like, even to a British person, I'm like, holy shit.
I actually have Hollow Man on the screen next to me.
But like, she's bad
at all times.
But that was okay. I give you a little funniest damn thing I've heard all month was that. It's like, Mrs. Get in here and read this text message. That guy's being hilarious.
I think the original quote is, "I would drag my nutsack a quarter mile through broken glass just to hear her fart through a walkie-talkie." That's the full quote. Yeah. That's not mine. It's a very famous. I think that was MLK actually.
So he closed his speech.
Famously. What a wordsmith.
Wait, somebody hired that actor to say that quote.
Oh, I can't tell if that was amazing joke or a hate crime. It's a little both. A little bit of both.
It's a level of down bad that definitely gets the authorities called on. Like it's
not going to make it on YouTube Shorts. I'll tell you that right now.
100% is. That's the promo I'm cutting for this episode. You better believe it. I'm just trying to look up some of the other random stuff from this movie. I've been looking in the, I like to go into the trivia section sometimes and find some interesting facts. You'd be actually fascinated to find out that there isn't a single interesting fact in the trivia for this movie, apart from the first film to shoot in New York.
You click on like trivia on IMDb page and says, "Oh, I didn't see you there."
Wow, holy shit!
Let me tell you
about the most uninteresting movie ever made.
Lightning struck children.
Lot of guilty two kids. They get married later. Lose a baby. Lose a dog.
God damn it.
That's your other TikTok. Well, honestly, you're gonna be a very busy guy, Will. You got a lot of TikToks.
So many TikToks to make. Oh god. This movie, it's just such a nothing movie. I gotta say though about Reese Witherspoon, I have never been able to get this out of my head, and I never investigated it further. It's just always been a thing that's been in the back of my head, which is for some reason Kevin Smith hates her. And I can't remember what the reason is, but he calls her Greasy Reese. He said this in publications. He's egged her house before. And Kevin Smith being the guy he is, that's just always made me like, what did she do to Kevin Smith? I've never investigated it. It's just always been one of those things where I'm like, I need to look this up. Why does Kevin Smith hate her? And I've never, ever...
Smith claimed that his hostility towards Witherspoon only grew after she mocked him. All right, I'm... getting into this, I'm fascinated because
after she made this movie.
Yeah, he's just like, this movie sucked.
Reese Witherspoon left a bad impression on Kevin Smith for her alleged attitude towards his ex-girlfriend. So
from Mallrats and Chasing Amy.
Mallrats, yes. So that's also, I guess he's just white knighting his ex. I can't imagine Reese Witherspoon being mean. She seems like, especially now, like in Hollywood, she is because she's got that credibility and she went out and she got her Oscar and everything else. But since then, all of the great sort of like roles for women and shows for women and things like that are all Reese Witherspoon produced shows. It's the Pretty Little Lies. It was Jennifer Garner was saying that, she hasn't really been working too much and she came back and she had this cool role and she's like, oh no, this is Reese Witherspoon. Thank God for Reese Witherspoon creating and giving voices for women and good roles and juicy things. And instead of like something like this, which is just so by the numbers, it's almost like, an insult.
I think you got to give him credit too. I think at that time, this movie, like people needed something like this, like some kind of form of brevity, like some kind of escapism, something you didn't really need to process too much, something that like something to exist, something else, like something else.
Yeah, I mean, like it's easy to forget, or like if someone's younger and stuff, but that collective trauma of September 11th was like the world we lived in. So I always say that, like, in retrospect, and I thought I was at a great age to be a teenager in the 90s, to be sort of coming of age as the millennium is coming. But the 90s was one of the most light-hearted times, I think, in history, because so the Cold War is over. We're no longer living under threat of thermonuclear war. It feels like, people are being it's okay to be gay. And like, oh man, it feels like we're living in a post-racist world. And it's like everything is just fun and the internet's happening and we're all connecting, and then just...
The music, it's on television. Don't you see?
Will never go away.
Don't you see?
And then September 11th, and then suddenly MTV stopped playing music, and that's, I think, that's
those two things.
Those two things, end of the world.
And then Blade Trinity, and then that ruined humanity for that.
And now we live in the dystopian future of Enemy of the State.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I actually made a TikTok talking about the 90s and how I feel like there's a tendency for people to kind of like look at the 90s through rose-colored glasses.
Definitely.
There are definitely a lot of things. I've said it before. I live in South Central where the riots happened. And so it's but I see what you mean. Like during this time, there was probably, we had Spider-Man, and this was like the only thing that could was our escape from the horrors
Oh
of
my
9/11.
God, yeah. But yeah, I can see. But you know what's interesting? Of all critics, Roger Ebert, the goat, gave this 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4 stars. It is a fantasy, a sweet, light-hearted fairy tale with Reese Witherspoon at its center. She is as lovable as Doris Day would have been in this role, so I enjoyed Witherspoon in the local color, but I'm also very tired of the underlying premise. So he's just, I think Roger Ebert, such a big fan of Reese Witherspoon, he's like, I give this movie a pass. Yeah. It's like, all right. ...
Fuck you, Kevin Smith.
He's
white knighting over his white knight.
Yeah.
Like I said, one of the weirdest celebrity feuds I've ever seen. But
it's so funny. Like watching this, I never clocked it as like, oh, it's just like a fairy tale. I just saw it as like a by the numbers romantic comedy. But had they leaned into that a little bit more, I guess you would have gotten like an Enchanted type of film.
Yeah,
but just actually make him a Prince Charming.
But also, if they've gone the other way a little bit, and they'd actually given Patrick Dempsey's character something to do.
Yeah.
And if they'd actually addressed the issue of her losing the child, if they'd actually
they played it too safe for sure.
Yeah, it's just too light and fluffy. It's like a fucking meringue.
Yeah. There's nothing
dropped on the floor.
It's a pavlova.
There's nothing under the hood of this movie at all.
It is quite Alabama, though, I will say.
Yes, while being shot in Georgia, but it is Alabama. But granted, the whitest country suburb of Alabama in the entire state.
Where there's actually a plantation wedding. And there was a lot of that was brought up a little too casually. Just be like, well, plantations used to be this, but now we think of them. I'm like, no. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think there was a line that said like they owned a lot of slaves, but not enough. Huh.
What a common complaint about. Just terrible, not enough.
Terrible. Like there was something like that. Like there was like a history in her family that was a little untoward. I don't.
And it's like I said, it was weird how they touched on like that wild and crazy, side of her that
makes no sense because you've never seen it.
And it only comes out when she gets a bit too drunk, and when she does get too drunk, she's
just a dick. Yeah.
It's
just mean. Yeah.
So no more drinking for Reese Witherspoon's character. Like you almost feel bad for Josh Lucas.
I did love seeing Marilyn. I can't say her last name. Marilyn Reichskub.
Famously from 24. Yeah.
It's like Gail the Snail, actually, from Always Sunny, as the bank teller. They're like, she's like, "Where's your ATM?" She's like, we don't got one. And she's married to the cop. And like, I thought their banter was great when Josh Lucas calls the police and he shows up and he's like, "Oh shit, girl, you back?" I thought that was that dynamic was fun, but again, like very just all of it felt very familiar.
Yeah, I mean,
you've seen better movies.
I always think of Marilyn Reichskub as Boyle's from Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
And she's also a Mr. Show back in the day.
Yeah,
and she's looked exactly the same in her entire career. Like
when that woman hasn't aged a day in the 20-something years since this movie was made. I'm like, good for you. You got incredible genes, Mary.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to rake you over the coals anymore for this particular one. Because I will say that Mrs. enjoyed this movie. She liked it. It is frivolous. It is light. It is by the numbers. It is elevated by Reese Witherspoon. And, let's give it a little, Jean Smart as well. And Candace.
Yeah, she's not in this movie enough, Jean Smart. I fucking love her.
Ethan Embry, so there was some great sort of supporting cast work being done. People were doing with what they had been given. They were doing things, for sure. But easily of the 3 movies, the most disposable. If you are a completist for this podcast, and
Adam, I'm talking about you.
Adam, who famously watches every single one of these movies.
Yeah, have fun with this one, Adam.
For better or worse.
But this is one that, like, I feel like the average person could skip. I feel like Selma is the one that everybody should watch once, and I think that Big Fish is that one that just.
It's a sleeper hit.
It's understated. People don't realize how good that movie is.
In like the echelon of Tim Burton movies, that's probably the one people don't put in a high enough tier. You know?
Yeah. And I was surprised, like you were, when Will said it was his favorite. I'm like, really? Yeah. Will? Like, because not being funny, Will. Sometimes you can be a curmudgeon and mean about movies. And like,
find me a bunch of episodes of this podcast to give you evidence for that. I don't think you can find a one.
But like, yeah, it was a surprise. But the thing about it is, and this is quite an interesting one, especially when it comes down to what we do here on the podcast, as to try and find, a movie that best defines a state, that all of them, for better or for worse, are extraordinarily Alabama. I mean, to the point of, like, Big Fish is entirely basically set in Alabama, right? So you can't take the Alabama out of it. Sweet Home Alabama is literally called it. And Selma.
And that's it. It's just, it's only Alabama in the title.
But spoiler alert, Selma, big part of that movie takes part historically at an actual place that happened in Alabama. So like, where do we even begin with this? Because like,
I feel like we're not qualified to.
It's almost. Well, I know what you mean, because like Big Fish. The thing about Big Fish is that while it is Alabama, it is also like 99% of the movie takes place in imaginary.
Yeah, it's a fantasy.
Ramped up Alabama, right? Then you've got Sweet Home Alabama, which just, is giving you just that country fried, it's chicken fried movie, basically. It's like, it's
Kentucky fried movie,
Yeah, I know, but you know what I mean? Like, it's
It's
giving you that vibe.
Sure.
And then
couldn't even get that right.
And then Selma is literal.
Yeah.
I mean, Selma is literal history, though I can't imagine many people in Alabama going, that's the movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what do you guys think?
I think it's unfortunate that not every state has their RoboCop. That's coming clear as we've, done 40 episodes of this show. But yeah, this is if I were from Alabama, would I want to claim Selma as like, that's the movie that defines Alabama? I mean, historically, it's so important and relevant, but I genuinely don't. I mean, my gut's like, yeah, it's Selma. It's the realist. It's all of this happened. It's important. It's an important part of history in general, and not just Alabama, but Sweet Home Alabama.
Well, I was gonna say, like, the way I'm looking at it is that Big Fish might be like an amped up version, but what it's also doing is it's sort of telling a story about family. It's telling a story, and like, that when you do get into the South and you get into sort of like places, when you go driving around the country, that there's a certain sort of mysticism. There's a certain vibe. Like, that's why I kind of like the whole Alabama of Big Fish. It's very much it's shot entirely in Alabama, and it's using that.
It's Alabama's like a character. Like,
it's using the water. It's using the vibe. It's adding, so it's without Tim Burton having to, like, he didn't create Tim Burton's Alabama. He shot it in Alabama and put some Tim Burton in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah. It like we were saying before, it's a heightened, it's a little surreal, but it's not so surreal. It's not such an invented universe as a lot of his movies are, that it's an alien place. It's like, no, this is Alabama. This is the people. This is like what you see when you live there. My argument for it is, like, while it's dreamlike and it's definitely a tall tale, it's also very American in its tall tales, and it's very much of Alabama. And it is all about family, and I think it being shot there certainly helps, but it's, I think, much closer to the real Alabama in a lot of ways than a lot. Selma is like history, and it's very important, but the entire movie doesn't take place there. we're getting one very specific snapshot, although it's an accurate snapshot in history.
Yeah.
Is it representative of all the Alabama? Not saying Big Fish is more representative, but yeah, I'm going back and forth.
No, I think you make a good point too. It's like I think Selma as a film was important to so much more than just Alabama, whereas Big Fish is like more of a contained story within,
Yeah, okay, look, I like that because you're right. Selma is very much an American story more than it is an Alabama story. It has a massive moment that takes place there, but this is actually a much, when you've got scenes with the president in DC, that sort of shows us, and we're cutting away to people from all over the country, that okay, all right, that what I think is actually for me sort of drawn a line under Selma, going, it's clearly the best movie and it's a clearly important movie, but the Alabama of it is very much a setting in the moment, but it's much more of an American story. Whereas when we get down to Sweet Home Alabama, as as lightweight and as frivolous as it is still like, representing or trying to represent an idea of Alabama, whitewashed as it may be, or just, like silly. But Big Fish is like, it's totally weird and bonkers and crazy, but without ever going too far, and that the Alabama of it is important. I think I lean towards Big Fish because it's just got such a great emotional story.
There's more depth to it for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Whereas
as much of it is a tall tale, but we keep saying that, Sweet Home Alabama also has this like fantasy fairy tale type to it, but it's just not done nearly as well as like a Big Fish.
Well, the people don't act like real people. They act like heightened rom-com characters, and even Edward Bloom in his tall tales, and there's still a folksy realness about him. All his sort of tall tales about his life, if you think about them, you can actually understand what the real version of those stories would be. You could kind of almost see like, well, the real version is he did get stuck behind enemy lines, happened to find these two sisters, and they did manage to sneak out of the country. He tells it in a very fantastic way, but you could see what the real story would be.
They weren't Siamese twins?
They were North Korean. That's an entirely different country.
What did I say?
No, I was talking to Ryan.
I thought I had just said like completely the wrong Asian country.
No.
No, you said, whatever. Doesn't matter.
Ryan did a racism.
Well, hang on.
As long as it's Ryan. Great.
I love throwing that around on the show. Just cancel.
Not again.
Put a little mark on my table for times I've accused Ryan of being a racist on the show.
Remind me next week to make an formal apology. Forgot to do mine from last week
for the apology.
God,
So I don't know. So I think, for me personally, I think I'm leaning towards Big Fish. It might be, like I said, like we've talked about, a bit more fantastical and a bit more colorful, but you're right that the truth of what is under there and the way of Edward Bloom and who he is and the relationship with his son, I think it all comes together in a way. I didn't expect to end up here, but I have. No. What do you guys think?
I mean, I for sure out the gate was gonna be like, oh, there's no way Selma's not gonna take this. But I mean, when you really break it down and think of it contextually, like, I think it has much more of a national importance. Like you said, it's a way more important story that happens to have like started in Alabama, whereas Big Fish is this fantastical story that's like wrapped in Alabama, and Sweet Home Alabama fucking sucks. I'm sorry, I don't mean to dunk on that movie that I picked, but it's the better of the two, and I think it has a broader, I don't know, it's like, I think of the two back to back, I'm like, fuck, I mean, Sweet Home Alabama, the problem is it's such a product of its time that you can't take like the 2002 out of it, whereas Big Fish you can watch today and be like, oh, okay, this is like a sweet modern fairy tale. It still feels
right. It's got a sort of timelessness to it, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Because it is, taking place in the past. And
yeah.
yeah, okay. I mean, so Will, what about you? Where are you leaning? Where are you landing? And wait,
yeah, Sweet Home Alabama wins for
yeah,
sure.
see,
Yeah,
just waiting for that.
Absolutely. Actually, we all know the real winner is Ernest Goes to Alabama.
What is it? Ernest solves racism?
Yeah. Ernest saves Selma.
Yes, he accidentally joins the Klan, but tells them and turns them all around by the end of the movie.
He gets them all to
That's like such a Zucker Brothers movie. Like, I don't know.
Vern, I'm in the Klan.
Oh no! Stop it! Stop that.
But Will, so Will, what do you think? I know it's your movie, but how do you feel about this?
Yeah, it was when I saw it was on the list, and I was like, oh yeah, it is in Alabama. I was immediately like, that's the one. Once I saw Big Fish, I'm like, yes, that's definitely no brainer, my pick.
And it's funny that it's funny you say that, because I was like, when you went with Big Fish, I was like, oh, that's set in Alabama. It definitely wasn't one of the first ones. That
I don't think of that movie as an Alabama movie. Whereas Sweet Home Alabama, it's right there in the title.
No, it is, unfortunately.
They even do the song at the end.
Yeah,
did they do that in Selma? Song, I don't think so.
Well, it's all common music, isn't it? No, it did go on to get nominated for an Oscar for it. So I feel like we're all leaning towards this. I think we're in
Big Fish for sure.
Yeah. All right, okay, we're doing it. We're putting our little stamp on it that the official movie here at the United States of Movie to represent Alabama, at least until we can find another movie, My Cousin Vinny, or something else like that.
Selma 2.
The Big Fish, 2003's Big Fish, directed by Tim Burton, starring Ewan McGregor, Albert Finney, Billy Crudup, Jessica Lange, Steve Buscemi, Danny DeVito, Deep Roy, and many more. I think it's a great pick. I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me feel good, as the movie did as well.
Yeah, and if you listen to this podcast, give it another chance. If you watch this through the same lens that we did, if you only seen that movie 20 years ago, it's worth watching again with a fresh take.
Yeah, 100%. Now, the next question, though, of course, was what were some of the other movies that we were circling at this sort of when it came to Alabama? There's actually there's quite a few. A lot of them, when you get into them, there's lots of sort of history. There's lots of racial history. There's Just Mercy, that Michael B. Jordan movie from a couple of years ago. I was circling that. Like I mentioned, but My Cousin Vinny was one that Ryan decided to not do, and instead chose Sweet Home.
I think the other one was Talladega Nights, but I think that movie jumps around. We almost
that's
picked
the
that.
problem.
Yeah.
But I do believe that Talladega is actually in Alabama. I was like, you could go for it, because the problem with that movie is it features in lots of states because it goes on the NASCAR tour. But I was willing to accept it for this one because Talladega is I want to say in Birmingham, Alabama.
You just wanted to watch that movie again.
I just wanted to watch that movie. Yeah, that would
be but you famously don't have a Blu-ray player.
I do own that movie. So any of the other movies that you guys can think of that we were kind of
To Kill a Mockingbird is another one that definitely pops up on that list for sure.
Fried Green Tomatoes. That was, I think.
I haven't seen that in a million years.
I think I maybe watched that once, freaking 25 years ago.
Yeah.
One I almost went for, because I've always wanted to see it as well, but along the same lines as Selma, was Driving Miss Daisy. Which I remember that coming out and just being like a big old movie. But it's also because it's not greatly rememmed. What about you, Will? Any of some classic old movies that we're not thinking about?
No, a lot of the ones I was circling were the ones we were talking about, like My Cousin Vinny and stuff. But I fixated on Big Fish pretty quick.
Yeah, you had that locked in right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you jumped on board with that one. There's Tuskegee Airmen, Fried Green Tomatoes, Just Mercy. Yeah, so it's all the kind of and then of course Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Is yeah. So there's plenty of movies for us to return to when we do come back around to Alabama, or if we do have a challenge episode. Speaking of challenge episodes, for once, I don't have to use my magical pen.
Oh yeah,
throw it up in the air.
We tricked someone into doing the show with us.
That is right. So we do. So we were actually going. We only about 4 or 5 weeks ago. We did go to Rhode Island. We felt kind of unsatisfied, honestly, by our choices. I think we felt like the Farrelly brothers had kind of got a bit involved. I think even then we still ended up. It was fun that you guys misremembered, as we often do, but we ended up with me, myself, and Irene. Even though we did have the absolutely bonkers Witches of Eastwick. But Will, you've got a guest coming on the show. Tell us about our guest next week.
Yes, if you're like me and you frequented College Humor back in the day, you'll remember this guy. He played Commissioner Gordon on all those Batman sketches, and he's got a massive TikTok following now where he reviews VHS tapes. It's Matt McCarthy, a comedian who loves reviewing he goes to estate sales, buys VHS tapes, reviews them on his TikTok, and it's endlessly entertaining, the stuff he finds. I'm so excited. We connected via TikTok, and I just happened to ask him. I was like, would you want to come on the podcast? And he was like, yeah, sounds great. So
yep, famously from Rhode Island. As well. So I genuinely can't wait to talk to him just about what is it like living in Rhode Island. And I won't spoil it. I won't spoil it yet, but we do know the movie that he has chosen. He's bringing one movie this time that we're going to sort of put up against me, myself, and Irene. But boy, am I not.
I will say, even though Me, Myself, and Irene did win, we're probably going to talk about The Witches of Eastwick for 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Because I
certainly didn't get into talking about that movie enough last time.
I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since we did that episode. It's consumed me.
Yeah.
It's almost like Jack Nicholson has this spell over me. I don't know.
Strange.
Yeah.
That movie is bonkers. So join us next week. We return to the teeny tiny state of Rhode Island, but we will be having Matt McCarthy on the show with us. We will be getting into the nitty gritty of Rhode Island, and I will probably be in some sort of therapy after having to watch the movie that I have to watch this week. Before we end the show at this point, I just want to say, of course, to anybody that's watching, if you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor, drop a comment. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Share this podcast with someone else that you think might enjoy it. If you're listening to us and you haven't already subscribed and want to get notifications, do that. Rate us, that does help as well. Also, please come and join the conversation. Like I said, I like to post my movie videos on a Monday, and people, like I said, they are still going off on those. We do also have a Facebook page where we're slowly building an audience there as well. Will likes to post, as I said before, on his TikTok. He likes to get into movies. He's entitled Millennial. Ryan does some great designs for movies, movie posters, but also silly designs based off the podcast as Rhino Digital. RYNO Digital on Threadless. Etsy.
Keep your eyes peeled for that Ernest shirt.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ernest is coming. That's the shirt. That's it.
But apart from that, Will, Ryan, thanks as always for joining me on the show and for bringing some interesting and fun and educational picks here to the show. At this point, we will see you next week. We'll be at Rhode Island. So thanks for joining us once again for this episode of the United States of a Movie podcast.